Today we're just going to run through vitamin D in the context of men's health for HRT. A lot of these topics, if you're, searching this on YouTube and you find it, it will still be applicable even if you're not on HRT.
Welcome to the video, everyone. My name is Dr. Steven de Vos, and I have with me Dave Lee from Australia. He already gave a great lecture on DHEA and pregnenolone that was appreciated a lot by a lot of subscribers and viewers. And this time around, he's going to give a lecture about vitamin D. Welcome, Dave.
Hi, Steven. Thank you for having me again.
It's a pleasure. Go ahead.
Welcome to this channel. I am Dr. Steven de Vos, the lifting dermatologist, and this is my bro science hunting partner Danny Bossa. If you want to learn more about the most cutting-edge science-based information in the world of hormone optimization, please like and subscribe.
Click the bell button to get notified.
I also invite you to join my other YouTube channel, The Lifting Dermatologist. The link you can find in the description of this video.
Awesome, thank you. So today we're just going to run through vitamin D in the context of men's health for HRT. A lot of these topics, if you're, searching this on YouTube and you find it, it will still be applicable even if you're not on HRT. But the recommendations at the end are, for that purpose. So we'll just jump right in. And before I start, just a couple of points. So vitamin D is a huge topic. So this is going to be, I guess, glazing the surface of a lot of points. Because if I got really into one topic, I'd have to get really into everything and we'd be here for hours. So I will go into stuff in enough detail, but it is a very surface overview of all the topics. And just off the bat, I'm not a doctor, I'm a health coach, but I'm not your health coach. So any advice on this is purely for educational purposes. And if you do want to pursue supplementing with vitamin D or optimizing vitamin D levels, work with a doctor. So off the bat, vitamin D technically is not a vitamin, it's a prohormone. We do, for definition purposes, lump it in with the other fat-soluble vitamins, being A, E, and K. But technically, because it's not bioavailable in the form of vitamin D, it needs to be converted within the body. Technically, it's a prohormone. It's estimated that 1 billion people worldwide are deficient, which is huge. It's converted via hydroxylase in the liver and kidneys into its active form. So it needs to be metabolized regardless of if you're getting it from food, if you're getting it from a supplement, or if you're getting it from the sunshine. The liver and kidneys need to metabolize it before it's bioavailable. So the activation of vitamin D becomes what's called calcitriol. I can never pronounce that. And binds to the nuclear receptor systemically as well as the vitamin D receptor. And vitamin D is a group of corticosteroids. So it's not actually just one thing, it's actually a group of different, I guess, vitamins we could call them, but they are corticosteroids. And vitamin D2 and D3 are the main ones that we look at within the context of human and animal nutrition. So 25-hydroxyvitamin D is the metabolite of vitamin D that we test. And the reason why we test this is because there's no use in testing how much raw material you're getting into the body. What we really want to look at is how much you're synthesizing and therefore how much you're metabolizing. And that way we can get a really good idea of how much vitamin D we have actually working within the body. And just a quick note, because this is of interest to, I live in Australia, we use a lot of sunscreen over here. Sunscreen blocks between 95 and 98% of vitamin D absorption. So I won't get into my stance on sunscreen, but keep that in mind. If you're lathering up in sunscreen and you're getting out in the sun, you're not absorbing, pretty much any vitamin D. So the ideal way to get vitamin D from the sun is short exposure, which I'm going to get to in the end. As frequently as possible, as you don't need to be in the sun for a long time to absorb vitamin D. So, just being out in the sun for a few minutes, going for a little walk, something like that, you are going to be absorbing a certain amount of vitamin D. You don't need to burn or be out for hours to get the sun. Small little amounts add up, and that's the most healthy way to do it, in my opinion. Just going to move the little window so I can see a bit better. Okay, so Vitamin D has a myriad of functions in the body. So we're just going to run through a few of these now. So one of the most recognized functions of vitamin D, particularly in regards to a context in which someone would be deficient, is calcium absorption. The biggest, I think actually the reason why they started looking into vitamin D in the first place was for treating and preventing rickets, which is bone softening. This isn't something that we really see too often anymore, fortunately. But yeah, so basically when you are very deficient in vitamin D for a long time, your bones will soften. Not likely to be applicable to anyone in this group or anyone watching, but that is the, I guess, the end result of being too far at the end of that spectrum. So not only does it help you absorb and is it vital to absorb calcium, but it also is required to absorb magnesium and phosphate. So right off the bat there, we know how important magnesium is. We know that magnesium gets depleted more rapidly when we are on testosterone. So off the bat, that's an incredibly important reason, if you needed another one, to optimize vitamin D, is to be getting optimal magnesium within the cell. It's also useful for cell proliferation and differentiation, immune system modulation, tyrosine hydroxylase expression. So tyrosine hydroxylase is the enzyme between the amino acid tyrosine and L-DOPA, which is the precursor to dopamine. So that conversion is rate limited by how much tyrosine hydroxylase we have. Therefore, the more tyrosine hydroxylase activity we have, the more dopamine we can make from the raw materials that we have in our body. So we're supporting neurotransmitter function, and we're supporting an adequate dopamine response to pleasure and stimulation. So it's a very important part of the brain. And that's a particular expression of tyrosine hydroxylase we see in the brain, but we actually also see it in the adrenal function, which means that it is related in the function of adrenaline. Another really important factor for vitamin D, and what I believe is one of the most important aspects of it in terms of the brain, which I'm going to be getting into shortly, is that it's required for the synthesis of what's called neurotrophic factors. And we're going to get into those shortly. It's also required for nitric oxide synthase and glutathione. So what we can see here so far is we've got multiple systems within the body that vitamin D is implicated in and is vital for. So glutathione being the human body's master antioxidant. And as I said, most importantly, it prevents rickets. So looking at mental health for vitamin D, which is a really interesting topic, because as a whole, when we look at the literature and reviews, it's argued and presented the evidence for vitamin D in treating depression and having a statistical impact on mental health is poor or is missing. However, there are quite a lot of studies that actually demonstrate the opposite. So in reading a statement like that, which I see thrown around all over the place, it's really important to actually look at the studies and then come to your own conclusion. So I've just got a few little highlights here of what I've looked at. And these are some of my favorite studies. So off the bat, one study showed that low levels of vitamin D correlate with symptoms of depression strongly. And I believe that study was out of the Netherlands. Another study of 2,070 people over the age of 65 showed a strong correlation with vitamin D deficiency and depressive symptoms. A small study showed improvement in depressive symptoms when supplementing with high doses of vitamin D for 8 weeks, and that was irrespective of their baseline level. And I'm going to get into the mechanism of that shortly, but I think of these studies in terms of mechanism, that's really important to note, because not only are we correcting a deficiency if it's present, but we're also able to take advantage of optimal vitamin D levels for improving mood, which when we're looking at hormone replacement and optimizing all the hormones in the body, that's one of the goals that we're after. Another small study showed correcting vitamin D deficiency when it was present significantly improved depressive symptoms. Deficiency has also been linked to neurodegeneration, depression, and type 2 diabetes. So vitamin D metabolites can cross the blood-brain barrier. So there are some arguments and evidence that would suggest that it may also be a neurosteroid in itself. Other neurosteroids, just for context, include things like androgens, thyroid, corticoids, including cortisol, DHEA, and pregnenolone. So these are substances in the body that can cross the blood-brain barrier and have an effect within the brain. So we've known for a while that vitamin D is responsible for regulating and promoting neurotransmitter function. But now there's even evidence to suggest that irrespective of those changes, it has activity in the brain within itself. So vitamin D, sorry, it says levels, it's meant to be receptors. Vitamin D receptors are found throughout the brain with high density in areas that are more responsible and correlated for dopamine function. There's also a lot of evidence to suggest that may be neuroprotective and likely to significantly modulate what's called nerve growth factor. It's also shown to increase tryptophan hydroxylase as well as tyrosine hydroxylase. So just like I said, tyrosine is a precursor for L-DOPA, for L-dopamine. Tryptophan is our precursor for serotonin. So we can see that there's evidence here to suggest that the more vitamin D we have to a point, which I'm going to get into shortly, will therefore increase and optimize our ability to make our feel-good neurotransmitters, which are serotonin and dopamine. We've also got a couple of studies, and these ones are really interesting, as it's been shown to slow, to a degree, what's called MAO activity. And this is an enzyme in the brain that basically breaks down and metabolizes neurotransmitters. So the higher level of this enzyme that we have, the less neurotransmitters that we have. So we don't want to completely crash it or completely send it through the roof, but we do kind of want it in this optimal kind of Goldilocks zone, like we do with a lot of things. And while it won't slow it to the extent that an MAO inhibitor would, it does make a difference in slowing that enzyme if it becomes overactive. Now, it's also been shown to reduce serotonin transporter levels. And serotonin transporters or dopamine transporters or any kind of neurotransmitter transporter is basically responsible for taking the neurotransmitter out of the synapse for metabolism. So it clears it. So in reducing the transport of serotonin out of the synapse, we're effectively increasing the amount of serotonin that can bind to receptors. And this is a similar mechanism, very loosely, but I guess similar for argument's sake, albeit to a much lower degree than an SSRI has. So we're not going to see, the side effects and the detrimental problems that SSRIs have, but we're working within a similar parameter here. Another interesting few studies has looked at seasonal depressive disorder. And they've actually found to have decreased vitamin D levels, which was, it has been known to be a given for a while. But as a result of the decreased vitamin D levels, we actually see increased levels of serotonin transporter. So the brain is becoming depleted of serotonin more rapidly in a low vitamin D state. The combination of this mechanism, in addition to serotonin receptor regulation by the omega-3 fatty acids EPA and DHA, has been used therapeutically to relieve depressive symptoms in multiple studies. And there's a really interesting model that looks at the two of these synergistically in optimal serotonin function and mood. So regarding dosing, and this is going to be the actionable takeaway for most people watching this video. So the RDA is interesting because in some cases it looks at international units, in other cases it looks at micrograms. So for conversion's sake, there's 40 micrograms to 1 international unit, but we're going to be looking at IU for the majority of this, as that's what most supplements and most recommendations are perceived in. So, and this is kind of interesting in terms of the RDA, because the adult RDA ranges from 400 to 800 IU. It's very hard to get a grasp of how much or how many international units of vitamin D you get per minute in the sun, because there are so many factors that's going to influence that, from how much skin you have exposed to the UV radiation of the sun, cloud coverage, time of day, it's not something that we can actually measure very well. And that 400 to 800 IU also isn't really what's going to give you optimal vitamin D levels, even to prevent bone demineralization. So it's a bit of a silly RDA in my opinion. It was recently increased. I believe it was the 400 and 800 ranges for different patient populations. But I believe that it used to only go up to 500 or 600 and they had it increased. Now, also levels are going to be very different. So we're going to be looking at nanomolars per deciliter, sorry, nanomolars per liter. And I'm just going to be using the numbers because I'm not going to keep saying the unit of measurement over and over again. So the recommended levels are between 50 and 75. Depending on which lab you look at, that's going to be different. But a lot of studies and practitioners will actually recommend going up to 100, particularly for athletes. And right off the bat, I'd be looking at, well, why do athletes need a higher level of vitamin D than someone who wants to be optimized in terms of their hormones? And the answer is that it's the same. That's irrelevant. Certain studies have suggested that levels, sorry, a typo there, that levels above 125 may be a cause for concern. I'm going to get into that shortly, particularly relating to artery calcification. And I'm going to dive into, why I think that is important, but can also be circumvented shortly. Further studies have only shown negative side effects, however, above 200. So these studies are very varied. In my opinion, they haven't been that well executed. And from what I can discern from these studies and my recommendations, based on dosing as well, is that anywhere between, we want it to be well above 50 because that's kind of the minimum level that we need for bone health. But depending on symptoms and depending on the individual, I wouldn't be putting in a clear cutoff at 125 or 150. Studies showing that 50,000 IU, which is a very high dose, over a period of months, can create toxicity in exceeding levels over 150. That's a very high dose to take, and you have to take it for a while. So vitamin D is quite a forgiving supplement because it does build up in the body. So we can be a little bit more aggressive with front loading it if needed for a deficiency. But yeah, toxicity can exist and does exist. But to get there, you have to dose it pretty high, and you have to have been dosing it pretty high for a while. So it would be, in my opinion, and from what I've seen with my clients and the blood work that I've reviewed, it would be hard to reach toxicity if you're keeping an eye on your health and not being stupid with it. Now, there is one thing to note here in terms of genetics, which is a field that I'm interested in. CYP24A1 can create a hypersensitivity to vitamin D supplements, resulting in hypercalcemia. So what this would mean is that if you have a certain defect in this enzyme, you will be hypersensitive to vitamin D, and you will potentially predispose yourself to artery calcification while taking a much lower dose of vitamin D. It's not a particularly common gene to have expressed to a degree in which I would think it would be concerning, but it is worth looking at if you do have your genetics sequenced. So we've got vitamin D2 and D3. I would say 90% of supplements on the market that are good supplements are vitamin D3. And this is the form of vitamin D that replicates what we get from the sun. So the main sources of vitamin D from food are egg yolks, liver, cod liver oil, fatty fish, and salmon. All fatty fish do contain it, but salmon does contain the most per 100 grams. And vitamin D2 is found in fungi. Many foods, however, are fortified with additional vitamin D. So if you look on the label of stuff like, like almond milks, I believe some coconut milks, juices, infant formulas, cereal, milk, sports nutrition products like bars and protein powders, a lot of them will say that they will say that they contain vitamin D. That is added vitamin D. Milk does contain a small amount of vitamin D naturally, but the amount isn't really all that significant. So yeah, as I said, And this vitamin D that gets fortified, or vitamin D in supplements, tends to be D3. So these are just my personal takeaways now. And, this is my kind of interpretation and recommendations across the board. So I believe that for anyone who's looking to optimize vitamin D and take a supplement, you want to aim for the level that is beneficial for athletes, which tends to be between 100 and 125. You could go a little bit lower, maybe 80 or 90 and 125. Now, going beyond these levels, personally, I don't see a benefit. If someone else says that there is a benefit, I won't disagree with that. And that's their practice and their opinion. But personally, for me, I don't see the benefit. The instance in which I would, however, push the levels higher or use a higher dose to potentially exceed this is if the individual is potentially not synthesizing vitamin D properly, and that could be due to genetic defects, or that could be due to a number of issues in which would be, a symptom and case-by-case basis. And what we'd be doing would be having a relatively short-term, say 2 to 4 week trial of doubling or even tripling the dose, and seeing if they get a subjective benefit on mood or in the other parameters that vitamin D is beneficial for. I have seen this a couple of times. It's not particularly common, but some individuals will, let's say, feel markedly better subjectively at a level exceeding 100 than they would between 70 and 80. So vitamin D, and this is in my opinion, must be supplemented with vitamin K. Not only is this easy to do, this is, to a degree, this is going to be your insurance policy against pushing the levels higher. So vitamin D and vitamin K are synergistic, same with vitamin A and vitamin E. So proteins produced via vitamin D synthesis are vitamin K dependent and require vitamin K for them to be metabolized properly. So the more vitamin D that you put into the body, the more vitamin K you need to be able to utilize it and also deal with metabolites effectively. And a lot of people just off the bat are already deficient in vitamin K. So if you're deficient in vitamin K, or if you've got a genetic predisposition to need more vitamin K than the average person, and you're already deficient, and you chuck in, maybe 10,000 IU, even 20,000 IU of vitamin D a day, you're going to create problems. And it's not going to kill you tomorrow. You might not feel it. You might even feel great. But long term, we do want to get that vitamin K in there to optimize your systemic health. How you feel is important, but also longevity is a really important parameter here. So yeah, for me, vitamin K is always included with vitamin D. Harmful effects of excessive vitamin D shown in studies were not supplemented with vitamin K. So when we looked at those studies that had issues of toxicity, they weren't controlling for vitamin K levels, and that wasn't one of the variables. So there are arguments for and against this, and regarding critical thinking and making your own decision, I would always recommend listening to the other side of the story. So for anyone who wants to do a bit of extra research, check out Chris Masterjohn. He has a couple of videos talking about this and a couple of podcasts that he's mentioned, in which he sees benefit in vitamin K, but doesn't believe it is an insurance policy for pushing levels high. And he's actually an advocate for keeping the levels closer to the 50 mark. So check that out if you want to challenge this point of view and then come to your own conclusion. But in my opinion, and from what I've seen, what I've practiced, and what I've read in the literature, vitamin D, as long as it is supplemented with vitamin K and you're not taking your levels to a stupidly high level and being irresponsible, is completely safe and beneficial. So for a lot of people, in terms of optimizing health and optimizing how they're feeling and their nutrition, vitamin D is a really low-hanging fruit. It's easy to supplement, it's cheap, it's available over the counter, and you can get your levels measured easily, and it has a big effect. If you are deficient in vitamin D, if you're walking around with levels sub 50, 20, 30, I've seen as low as 10, and you optimize those levels to a range around the 100 mark, you're gonna feel it. You're gonna feel better. And we know that vitamin D is from the sun. We know that we probably spend a little bit too much time indoors these days. So from an evolutionary and just holistic functional perspective, it's important. Human beings, we're living organisms, and what do plants need? Plants need water and they need sunshine. You don't give a plant sunshine, it's going to die. Are we plants? No. But it's still incredibly important for us to get sunshine, and we have evolved to get a lot more than the average person does on a day-to-day basis. So for most people, and this is depending on the deficiency, and this is where I would recommend, working with a coach or working with a doctor on this in terms of how to execute this, properly and safely. Your deficiency can be corrected pretty quickly, but it does take time to build up in the system. So, if you have a level of vitamin D that's in the gutter and you go out and pop, 20,000 IU, you're not going to fix that deficiency overnight. It does need to build up gradually in the system. You can get it injected if you want, and that will be a more rapid uptake. But oral supplements are incredibly well tolerated. And I believe that it's actually beneficial to slowly raise your levels so that your body can get used to it over time. We don't want to shock the system. So for most people, we can correct the deficiency by using between 10 and 20,000 IU daily for between 3 and 4 months. And then we can use between 2 and 10,000 IU for maintenance. And what this is going to come down to is how you respond to the supplement, how much vitamin D you're getting in your diet, but more importantly, how much sunshine you're getting and how you respond. So, I have some guys who only need maybe 1,000, 2,000 IUs a day, but they're people who are working out in the sun all day, going surfing for their free time, living in Australia, getting lots of sun year round. Other people who, mainly work inside or live in an area that's a bit more gloomy and dark, they may need up to 10,000 IU long-term for maintenance. That's going to be relatively individual. My favorite vitamin D supplements are a D3 and K2 blend. So Sports Research make a great one that comes in a coconut soft gel, and Life Extension also make a great one that's a little bit cheaper. They're both 5,000 IU of vitamin D. Life Extension also do a version which is the same, but they add in 1 milligram of iodine from organic kelp. That's actually my favorite one, and that's one that I take personally, and you can pick that up on Amazon, iHerb, relatively cheap. Some individuals will have a genetic requirement for more calcium, and as a result of vitamin D being crucial for calcium uptake and metabolism, they will also benefit from more vitamin D. So that would be one of the instances that I would be, pushing levels a little bit higher if it was necessary. And, for me, I fall into the category above. So I surf, 2 or 3 times a week, walk in the sun quite a lot, consciously try to get as much sun as I can without getting sunburnt. And I take 5,000 IUs of vitamin D a day. And when I travel to visit family, in like Northern Europe or go somewhere that doesn't get a lot of sunshine, I'll take 2 capsules, which will be 10,000 IU. And that keeps me right about the 100 mark. Cool. So just to wrap up here, so there's a huge amount of benefits of sunlight. Vitamin D is not a replacement for sunlight. Vitamin D is one of the benefits that we get from getting more sunshine, but it is not the only benefit that we get from getting more sunshine. So what I would recommend is trying to get as much sunshine as possible in short, frequent doses. So, what we see a lot in Australia is people will sit inside all day, not get any sun, and then they'll go lay on the beach in the 40-degree heat for 3 hours and just get sunburnt to a crisp. That's just dumb for so many reasons. The best way to get vitamin D is to be in the sun as frequently as possible and not being out for long enough that you'll burn. So I believe the recommendation of how much sunshine to get is like 5 to 30 minutes twice a week. I think that's also dumb, and that's really low. Just try to get as much of your body in the sun as frequently as possible. And, if you can do this, try to get sunshine first thing in the morning around midday, which is when you're going to get the most vitamin D out of your sun exposure. And then a bit in the evening as well. And that's because in the evening and in the morning, if people have been looking into stuff like infrared saunas or red light therapy, that's where you're getting those rays. So the anti-inflammatory effects and the circadian rhythm modulation effects come from the sunlight that we get, first thing and last thing in the day. And we're going to be getting more vitamin D in the middle of the day. So that's it for vitamin D. So as I said, for most people, 5,000 IU a day is going to be, a pretty good maintenance dose. If you have a major deficiency, you could look at more, but again, test your levels, work with a doctor, and don't be stupid with it, and get some sunshine. That's it.
Okay, thank you so much, Dave.
No worries.
I do have a couple of questions. First one, is there a certain dose of vitamin K recommended per international unit of vitamin D?
Yeah. No, there is not technically. And it depends on the form of vitamin K, because there's different forms of vitamin K and they have different levels of bioavailability. Again, if you want to get a comprehensive look at vitamin K, I could explain it now, but Chris Masterjohn does a way better explanation than I do. If you look up his podcast, I believe his podcast with Paul Saladino, he goes right into the different forms and looks at the different bioavailability as well of like plant forms and animal forms of vitamin K. So it depends on the form and the dose. But those two supplements that I recommended, the Life Extension, I believe, is a blend of K1, K2, and it might have MK4 in it, whereas the Sports Research one is only MK4. Those ratios in those supplements are perfect. Jarrow also do a really good MK4 supplement. But when you are supplementing with vitamin D and vitamin K, I'd recommend just getting a blend. It's going to be way cheaper. You'll end up paying double the price to separate them. And that way you can always have those ratios correct.
Okay, good tip. Another question, timing of intake, when is best? In the morning, I guess?
Yeah, and now there's some argument that vitamin D in the evening is beneficial, and I'm actually not sure of what the justification for that is. Some people have reported, and a couple of my clients actually say that taking vitamin D at night helps them sleep. And that could be due to the increase in serotonin, maybe. But across the board, I mean, my main recommendation is take it in the morning, because that's, when we're going to be getting our sun. That's mimicking circadian rhythm as much as you can. But because it is a fat-soluble pro-hormone vitamin, whatever you want to call it, you don't need to, but you should take it with other fats to allow the body to metabolize and absorb as much of it as possible.
Sure. I always take it in the morning with breakfast and my omega-3 fatty acids. So
yeah, perfect.
That's a good combination as well. Another question I had personally, are there any recommendations or data, for kids, for young children?
Yeah, that's a great question. The RDA for children is a little bit lower. So on the previous slide, when I was talking about 400 to 800, 400 is the range recommended for children. So, I mean, off the bat, I would be, if they're going to be supplementing, I'd be supplementing maybe with 1,000 or 2,000, giving them a lower dose. But in terms of the ranges, it's going to be the same. It's just they should be able to metabolize it more effectively. So yeah, I would start them low and go slow and look at their levels. And in terms of a supplement form, I believe Now Foods make a 1,000 IU version. And I think Jarrow make a low dose vitamin D and vitamin K combo as well.
Okay. I think I covered all the questions we had in our Facebook group as well. So, okay, that's very comprehensive, Dave. Thank you so much for this wonderful lecture.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me. Cheers.
Okay, thanks.